Hey guys, welcome to SheKnowsArsenal. We're going to be going over the most recent Arsenal news and transfer news, so make sure you guys like this video. Oh my god. Hold on. The most recent Arsenal news and transfer news, so make sure you guys like this video. Hold on, I'm trying to get comfortable. Like this video and subscribe to the channel. I think this is going to be a long one, so I want to make sure I'm nice and comfortable. I probably should have made another cup of coffee, but here we are. Bids have gone in for several players. Last night, I didn't do a live on Urian Timber, so I'll give my thoughts on that today. A second bid has gone in for Havertz. A second bid has gone in for Declan Rice. And talks are advancing with Romeo Lavia. And Thomas Partey's agent has been given permission by Partey to negotiate his exit from Arsenal to Saudi Arabia. So there is a lot of things going on. For me, it's a lot of excitement based on the chat. It feels like some people are ready to jump off of a cliff, which I can never really understand why. It was just a couple of days ago on like maybe the first or second day of the window where there were actually people in the chat saying we weren't doing anything, we were dragging our feet. Oh my gosh, like we're not going to get any business done. And it's clear that Arsenal are working on things. We'll start with the big one in Declan Rice, where I think most of the frustration is probably coming in, which I can kind of understand, but I also don't understand at the same time. So before Ornstein tweeted, there was a bunch of people, like different journalists, talking about the bid for Declan Rice would go in today. And we know that we started off with a bid that was rejected offhand, that some people report as 80 million pounds, like flat, and that was it. And some said it was 80 million plus 10. And I remember listening to Ben Jacobs speaking about this quite a bit around, it's not the fee is not as important as the structure of the deal for Declan Rice. Arsenal have always said that they're willing to go to and above around 100 million. And West Ham wanted 120 something million plus add-ons, but if more was paid up front, that the final fee could actually be decreased. So he said that Arsenal are still pushing to land Declan Rice under 100 million. West Ham dismissive of the opening bid, both in terms of the guaranteed fee and the structure. Hammer's hoping for a bidding war, but Arsenal plan to remain disciplined. They know Rice wants the move. And so, yeah, the structure has kind of been talked about a lot more than the final fee. And so Ornstein reported that Arsenal made a 90 million pound bid for Declan Rice, the second one, an improved offer to West Ham for Declan Rice for 75 million plus 15 million in add-ons. Club record proposal for the 24-year-old England midfielder expected to be turned down by West Ham, but Arsenal are getting closer to an acceptable fee for the target. And then Fabrizio Romano followed up with his basic summary of it and saying that, West Ham expect Manchester City to come into the race next week, albeit I will say that after our very first bid, the media were saying that they would come in within 24 hours. So I just want to put that out there, that they've been kind of saying that Manchester City would come in, they would come in, other teams would come in, but nobody has. And it does feel like a lot of Arsenal fans are ignoring very credible and reliable reports around Declan Rice's preference to come to Arsenal. It has been mentioned more than one time, one by John Cross, by Nazaire Cancella, by several different people, Jacob Steinberg, that the reason why West Ham are struggling to get a bidding war struggling to get a bidding war going is because Declan Rice has made his preference very clear, that he wants to go to Arsenal and he's not going to encourage other teams to come in. Now, if this drags on forever and ever, then you can kind of see maybe where other teams would say, like, I'm going to try to get involved. But because his preference is Arsenal and he wants his future kind of set in stone within the next 10 days, something is going to have to give. So I view this as improvement and inching towards where we want to go. Some Arsenal fans are very anxious and they want it done, but the reality is that, like, hundreds of millions of pounds are being given from one person or one club to another. It was never gonna be a one and done, a two and done, like, it's probably gonna take 3, maybe 4 bids to get it perfect because West Ham have their own agenda as well. They wanna get as much as they can. They also wanna get as much as they can up front. They have FFP issues, and they also need a big summer of their own. But West Ham are actively searching for new players. They have started the process of trying to bring in somebody to replace Declan Rice. They're looking at Paulinia from Fulham. And I also saw that they're linked to a really talented young player. I think his name is Alex Scott, which would be a 25 million pound bid from him to leave the championship to West Ham. So we are getting closer. In the background, they are searching for replacements and players that they can bring in by using this money. I think Arsenal fans are getting really caught up in the final figure and saying, well, it has to be 120 million, but we have no idea what the difference between the structure of this bid is and the structure of the last one. This could be more upfront. And personally, I do think that if you add maybe 5 million to the 75 and the fit like 5 more to the 15 million, you get to the 100. And I think also what West Ham are looking for is to be able to say that they sold their best ever midfielder for 100 million pounds. Like, they want that is a good marketing tool, it's good PR. And so we're right below that. We're at 90 million. And so if Arsenal just come with another bid, which they will, we'll get closer to where we want to be. But patience is just not something that this fan base tends to have. And, before this news, I was kind of looking forward to coming onto stream and talking about, Timber and, the new Havertz situation and Lavia. But I feel like this has kind of put a damper on it because people felt like it was going to get done a lot quicker. It's only been like 1 week of the window. It opened on what, the 14th? It's the 20th. Like, calm down, it'll get done, and his preference is making it very difficult for them to start a bidding war. And so I still feel like Arsenal can be confident. I feel like if Arsenal thought that Man City were going to come in tomorrow and blow them out of the water, they'd be trying to push this a lot more. But Arsenal want to do things on their terms. And one thing that's strange to me that, sorry, my throat is is a little bit dry. But a tweet that I saw Dan Critchlow put out a couple of hours ago, he said that um, to the Arsenal fans reading that the club are making a club record bid and are responding that it will be rejected. I hope West Ham are paying you for their PR. Otherwise, I don't know why you'd be arguing that one of our targets should cost more. And I do think that, like, Arsenal fans are doing their fair share of what West Ham want. They want the media to be up in arms about these bids that Arsenal are putting in. And instead of holding tight and like relaxing, you're kind of doing the work for them by making it look like Arsenal are doing something wrong when nobody, like, the bidding process is always like this. It's so rare that a team goes in with a bid that's exactly what the selling club wants. And the problem with going in with the 120 million, and adding the add-ons and giving West Ham exactly what they want, one, they can ask you for more, and two, that's going to cut into the budget for the other targets. So I think patience is a virtue. It's something that we tend not to have a lot of, but for people that were saying that nothing was happening and we're not doing anything and we're not going to get any players in and all that kind of stuff, that's clearly untrue. We're probably just a couple of days away from seeing some incomings come in, which should be exciting, but you know, it's not as exciting because people really know how to suck the fun out of a transfer window. Um, so yeah. Allison says, Jess, fans feel like the club is messing around and other clubs will come in and take him. Yeah, I hear that, but at the same time, like, nobody at this level has ever negotiated hundreds of millions of pounds changing hands. So it's playing out in the media, and people are falling for every little thing that comes out and reacting very largely to every single thing. I get the anxiety around somebody else coming in, but I feel like you should have some sort of, like, confidence that, like, there's been multiple people that have said, even today, that the reason why West Ham are struggling is because they can't get a bidding war going. And Arsenal must be somewhat confident in what they're doing. I know some people don't trust the club and don't trust Edu, but I just feel like there's enough out there if you read it. The funny thing is people will believe anything negative about Arsenal, but don't believe anything positive or anything that could potentially go in our favor. And I find that to be a little bit strange. Um, Yo-Yo says, Gunner's anxiety screams small club energy and a lack of trust in Arteta and Edu. Typical. It's just like very all the time, constantly worried, constantly this and that. And it's just like, I can understand if Manchester City slapped down like a bid of 120 million tomorrow, then you know, fine, then I can understand being like freaked out and stuff, but they haven't come in yet. And actually, Fabrizio Romano yesterday, when when he was talking about the Kovacic deal, was saying that if they bring in Kovacic and they're in advanced talks to bring him in, like they are finalizing that deal, that they actually wouldn't come in for Rice because Kovacic is seen as like an alternative to Rice for them. And I'm just like, okay, well, from Fabrizio's standpoint, if he's getting information from West Ham, they're always going to put it out there that somebody else is going to come and take him, and we need to hurry up because, you know, so and so is going to come in and so is going to come in. But Arsenal, I think, have more information than we do in terms of who's going to come in and who's not going to. I think we're kind of naive in that way where we think like they're just out there and they're blindsided and they're not going to know anything. If Man City was going to come in, they would fucking know. So I would just say like, I would just relax a little bit, just that's kind of how I am. Just wait, because we can have the conversation about getting hijacked when it happens, but people are acting like it's happened already, and it's weird. Let's see. What else is going on? I'm just making sure nothing else has really happened. It says Arsenal move offer, Arsenal going close to an example. Yeah. So nothing else, but yeah, nothing else yet. So yeah, let's see. Ramon says fans are reacting based on past history. I think they're reacting very much more. It's the Mudryk situation. I think that's mostly what it is. It's Mudryk, because in the past, I don't remember us having like I'm having a hard time reaching back into time and like finding a bunch of examples where we went in for somebody and we were completely blindsided by that, another team taking our player, our player that we thought we were going to get. And Mudryk is very like it's very fresh in the mind because it was the last transfer window. But I still feel like there's enough information out there and enough confidence within the club to kind of wait before it's strange. CD says, relax when we are making embarrassing offers and when we already know the valuation. Are you okay, Jess? Yeah, I'm perfectly fine. Are you okay? Like, you're saying it's embarrassing because West Ham media is coming out and telling you that it's embarrassing. A 90 million pound club record deal or club record offer for Declan Rice when we know that they want about 100 million or 100 million could get it done is nowhere near embarrassing. You guys twerk for rivals so much, and I actually think that's more embarrassing than Arsenal trying to make sure that they work within a budget and they also get Rice on their own terms. If you always are just giving teams exactly what they want, then they'll just turn you over every single day. West Ham started at 120. We started off around 80. We'll meet somewhere in the middle. And that middle point will probably be 100 million. But if you guys want to twerk for rivals and kind of, continuously, for me, it's more embarrassing that fans are doing West Ham's bidding for them instead of having faith in their own club. It's weird to me. Let's see. Let's see. Gavin C says we've tried to work within budgets before and never get the elite player that we want. Yeah, well, you guys are saying just go in there and give West Ham exactly what they want, which is 120 million. 120 million is, that's significant. And I still feel like the repercussions that has on the rest of the window, and also what it has to our reputation to negotiate deals. There's always negotiation in deals, always. But you guys are basically saying, go out there, give Chelsea 75 million for Havertz, go out there and give Brighton 80 million for Caicedo, go out there and give West Ham 120 million for Declan Rice, go out there and give Ajax 60 million for Urian Timber. Don't negotiate, just give them the full fee. Just do it so that you can feel more comfortable. You guys know that's not exactly what you want. What you want is you want it done quickly so you can rid yourself of this anxiety. So then you're saying things that don't actually make sense and don't actually occur within negotiations. There's always a middle point that you have to reach. We just have to be patient and keep our heads screwed on. Like, I still think doing the bidding of the rival teams, to me, is more of a flop than, Edu putting in 75 plus 15 when we don't actually understand the structure. And Ornstein said we're getting closer. So I don't know why I'd say we're getting closer if we actually weren't. But people don't read; they read what they want to hear, which is we're bottling it. Logic says 120 million is not worth it, but 90 million is also disrespecting the market and West Ham. But the thing is, like, you're saying that it's disrespectful when it's not the final fee. I can understand more if Arsenal said, and this is all we're willing to pay. If Arsenal said that that's all they're willing to pay, then I could kind of understand. But at 100 million, Declan Rice is it's the English record. Like, so we're 10 million off from the English record, and we're nowhere near the end of negotiations. Nobody said that's our final fee. Nobody said that's what all we're willing to pay. The problem is you guys are reacting very big to something that's not done yet. So yeah, it's negotiations. You start at one place and they start at one place and you meet somewhere in the middle, and people are jumping the gun a little bit too quickly. And I didn't hear it. I didn't see any West Ham. I didn't see Sky Sports or anybody saying it was embarrassing or anything like that this time. We're clearly in negotiations. I just feel like people just need to relax a little bit. Just a little bit. Everybody's issue, it's not so much I don't think it's about the money. I don't think it's about feeling like we're disrespecting them. I don't feel like it's about anything but Arsenal fans want it done because they don't want to be anxious about it because they're afraid it's going to get hijacked. That's what it is. It's, and I kind of understand that, but like, come on. O'Malley says, what kind of wild is we were the youngest team in the league last year and all of our signings work out, we will be younger. Let's see. Jack says, Jess, there are receipts waiting for you and Arsenal fans with Havertz. Don't become a sheep, please. I don't know what that means, but like I already said, I want Havertz to do well. And as soon as he puts on the Arsenal shirt, that's what I want. All this, like, I have receipts and all that kind of stuff. It's just like, okay, whatever. I don't care. But yeah, anyways, the difficult thing is, like I said, like 10 minutes before I started the stream, I thought that the stream would be a little bit more positive and a little bit more like, because people would see movement. But the Declan Rice thing has kind of put a damper on it for other people, but it kind of hasn't for me. So we're going to go through all the deals and kind of where we are with them. And yeah, so make sure you guys like this video and subscribe to the channel. We've already kind of talked about Declan Rice's second bid went in. It's expected to get rejected, but Arsenal are improving and moving in the right direction to get the person that they want. Like I already reiterated, Declan Rice wants to come to Arsenal. That's his preferred destination. That's why it's difficult to get the bidding war going with other teams. And he wants his future sorted within the next 10 days. So we should come to a conclusion kind of, within the next week or so, which should give some people some calm, because it was never going to happen in like 5 days. Like, that was so unrealistic, and I don't know why people thought that. Now, in terms of Kai Havertz, there has been some movement there. We put in a second bid for Kai Havertz as well, and there's said to be a little bit of a gap there as well, but they expect that deal to get done because he wants to come. Chelsea need to sell, and Arsenal put in a bid of 60 million, which is 55 plus 5. And And like I said, Havertz wants the move. Chelsea are going to drop their asking price of 75 million. So that one might end up being 60, you know, 60 altogether or something like that, or 65 maybe. But it's all moving in like positive direction, and that one is definitely going to get done. That might end up being um our first signing, which I know people won't be excited about, but things are definitely moving. Ryan Taylor Sports says things are moving quickly at Arsenal. Second bid for Declan Rice is submitted. Progress on Kai Havertz. Chelsea need it done before June 30th when they submit final financial reports, and talks are positive for Urian Timber. So yeah, that's what he's saying. So yeah, Kai Havertz is an interesting one because I know a lot of people don't necessarily want him, but I did watch the Tifo video on why Arteta wants Kai Havertz and how he can be used. He basically kind of spoke about how he could kind of fill in those forward roles, but most likely his role would be kind of like in that 10 position, playing off of the striker, kind of like how Xhaka did, and we'll play in a box midfield like we did last season. And so, yeah, it's one of those where we have to kind of like wait and see how he fits in with the team. 60 million for Kai Havertz is a huge risk because we haven't seen him do well in England at all. Like, he hasn't been consistent. He has like a good moment here, a good, half of a game here, a good 90 minutes here, but nothing consistent. So the reluctancy to get on board with this signing, I completely understand. And I think it'll take some time for him to like win people over, if he starts playing well. But this gives him an opportunity to start, fresh with a new club, with a team that has a settled system and a manager that knows how he wants to use that player. Most players that have come into Arsenal have slot in, and it makes complete sense as soon as you see them in the position. And so I'm hoping the same thing for Kai Havertz, because it kind of has to work out with the wages and the fee attributed to the signing. But nevertheless, things are moving in a positive direction to get that one done. So yeah, things are happening. Tope says Havertz 70 million. Let's see. Brand Servant says hope Arsenal pay the money for the German Zidane. Ramon says Kia will be good. Kai will be good with Arsenal. James says, what is it with Arsenal and Chelsea rejects? I don't know. Yo-Yo says Havertz has regressed since leaving the Bundesliga. This would truly show Arteta's coaching chops for sure. Like, he definitely has to get, I think it's like more than just getting a tune out of him. Like, he has to be quite good at Arsenal. So it's a huge risk, but at the same time, knowing that, you're going to bring in a Declan Rice, you're going to bring in a Romeo Lavia as well. It takes, I think, the pressure off of Kai Havertz to have to be like that midfield savior for us. He'll play that Xhaka role. He'll play, centrally, may play off of the wing, and hopefully he's playing in a position that he feels comfortable in. I think people get too kind of caught up in the position, and they're like, well, he can't play number 8. Yeah, well, Xhaka's position is not really an 8. He's more of like a number 10 or a second striker coming into the box and stuff like that. And I think he could do that. But it's just a matter of the clean slate, getting the attitude together, getting him in a place where he can perform. And that's where the work is really going to have to go down with Arteta, is going to be up here, because he looks like a player that's void of any sort of confidence. Matt Vang says, so I get once we continue to run this way, we eventually stop reacting this way and be able to trust the club gets the player we really want. So it just takes time. No, I kind of get what you're saying, but there's a difference between, being apprehensive and maybe a little bit, reluctant to believe something is going to happen, and completely flying off the rails a minute, like a day into the window. So I can, like I already said, I've said it a million times. Like, I understand people maybe feeling like the deal won't get done, or, feeling anxious about it because it's still up in the air. But I will never validate or like say that I think that it's fine or like okay to be saying that Arteta and Edu should be sacked 2 days into the window because the deal was not done yet. So there's always a line. And where I think the line for me is when it just becomes like hysteria. And I do think Arsenal fans get into hysteria very, very quickly. It goes 0 to 100 really quick, and also there's this almost like desperation to like ignore very credible news that says anything positive, but falling very, very deep into the negative things all the time. So, yeah, I understand being a little bit more confident as we get these deals done, but I'll never validate hysteria. Like, I just won't. It's silly to me. Um, let's see, but and keep saying like, "Oh, it's past experiences, past experiences." That doesn't mean that like 2 days into the window saying Edu should be sacked is like a good response. It really doesn't. But yeah, Havertz 2 bids in. I think that will end up being our first signing. So there you go. There's 586 of you guys in here. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel. Just gonna check and make sure nothing else has no more bombs have dropped or nothing else new. Let's see. Let's see. This is saying the Gunners have made Rice the #1 target. Rice heads off into the holiday. West Ham want to trigger an auction, but seek to recoup over 100 million for their captain. But Rice wants to join Arsenal, who has already verbally indicated their intention to make a second bid. So I don't know. People are saying that they're not sure which bid has went in. It's the first or second. It's hard to understand what actually happened. This feels like the second one. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with that. But nothing really new from that standpoint. But yeah, Kai Havertz, definitely people are gonna have to come around to that. But somebody that I don't think is gonna need a lot of coming around to if we do sign him is Urian Timber. So we talked about, for the last couple of weeks, like what is that defensive signing going to look like? Is it going to be more of a right back that can play on both sides? Is it going to be more of an attacking player, more of somebody that can do more of the overlapping that Ben White does, but maybe is not the best at? Or, is it going to be more of like a center back signing, type of player? And we were heavily linked with Ivan Fresneda, heavily linked with Sasha Bowie, as well as Simican. And out of nowhere yesterday, Arsenal, it was confirmed that Arsenal put in a bid for Urian Timber. And so he's a very talented player. Like, I don't watch him. I don't watch the Eredivisie every day, but he's very highly rated, which, um, you want to hear that the players that you're going in for, people think are quite good, right? But yeah, like Arsenal are in talks with Ajax over signing defender Urian Timber. Discussions have been described as very positive, and there appears to be a willingness from all parties to get a deal done. If you guys remember, last summer, Manchester United really wanted Urian Timber, but he was told by, I think, Van Gaal not to leave that summer, to wait, because if he chose to go to Man United, he wouldn't get chosen for the World Cup squad. So he ended up rejecting Man United. And then they ended up going for Lisandro Martinez, who we were also interested in. And now we're trying to sign Timber. And so that deal looks like it's moving in the right direction. Arsenal are going to make an improved bid, but there's kind of like confidence on all sides that the deal can get done. I wonder if the fact that we're dealing with Sven Mislintat and not Edwin van der Sar has anything to do with the deal seeming like there's a better relationship between Ajax and Arsenal, because I'm not going to lie, I do feel like they were desperate to sell Lisandro Martinez to, Man United instead of sell him to Arsenal. There was like this, well, we're just going to wait for somebody else to come in. It's like they were always holding that space for them, where this feels like a little bit more of like just a normal negotiation where there's nobody else really involved and we could just kind of like do our thing. And so, yeah, this is an exciting signing, I think, because he's very good on the ball, very talented, young player, also has Champions League experience. Also fits more of the mold of like the players that we already kind of have back there, where good on the ball, but also has the physical capabilities to play. and could kind of slot into that right back position or that right center back position. So he has that versatility. And when we talk about inverting on the right hand side, he would be the perfect player to do that because you don't lose any physicality. You have a good defender there. But if you have Yuri and Timber playing next to, let's say, Lavia, or playing next to Declan Rice, or playing next to Jorginho, I think you have a good base there to work from. So yeah, I really like the idea of this signing. Arsenal's opening offer was 30 million and it was rejected, and Ajax want 50 million. But again, Arsenal are going to go back into it with another bid, and there will be some middle ground that they will reach because that's how negotiations like kind of go. But yeah, let's see. Eric says Jess Timber is a nice center back, right back. What makes me like him a lot is his aggression and calmness. Yeah, which is cool. Carl says Man City are currently the bigger club than Arsenal in the European pedigree. Okay. Ali A says, Jess, what if you are doing the bidding process for someone else just to get hijacked for Timber? Um, I mean, maybe that's because you're thinking that somebody else will come in. The difference between like last summer when we were looking at Lisandro Martinez and even Mudryk is that there was always like this, well, they just want to go to the Premier League. Or like Mudryk, it was always like his preference is to move to the Premier League. Even though he wanted to come to Arsenal, he would just go to the Premier League. The thing is I think Arsenal have learned that they want to get far enough in negotiations with the player where they can feel confident negotiating without any stress of that player's head being turned or anything like that. Because contrary to popular belief, you can't just sell a player to anybody. The clubs can, agree with other teams, but like if the player wants to go to a specific destination, you can't just ship him off anywhere. So I know that Liverpool fans really want Yuri and Timber, and Man United fans do as well. But I think Arsenal get into negotiations far enough now with personal terms agreed and some sort of like verbal, hey, like this is where you want to be at. So yeah, I think that's just more from like a rival standpoint. Well, maybe we can come in, blah, blah, blah. But, I think Arsenal feel confident that they can get it done, and I think we will. Terrence Tibbs says 35 to 80, 38 mil, get the deal done. Yeah, hopefully we can come to a middle ground. I think we will. That would be, a good fee for somebody like that because he's really talented and he has a high ceiling. Let's see. Alistair says we are the closest English team to them. Okay, you guys are talking about something else. Logic says Ajax aren't taking chump change for their best players. Timber's gonna take a good fee to complete. Well, again, like that's your feeling on it, but the reports are saying that there's confidence on both sides that it can get done. They want 50, Arsenal are at 30. They will come to some sort of middle ground. So even though you're saying that, oh, they're not going to take chump change, maybe they're okay with letting him go for a certain amount. And you guys forget that like they could have cashed in on him a lot with a much bigger fee last summer, but he decided to stay and sign a new deal. So there could be an agreement that if he finds a club that he wants to go to, that they will negotiate a deal, even if it's not as high as they could potentially get, that gets him out at the club that he wants to go to because he signed that new deal for them and gave them an additional year. I think again, we're getting too bogged down in the weeds of like, they're going to want a big fee and we're not going to be able to negotiate it. You always find like a middle ground. That's like how it always kind of goes. Um, it'll be fine. Like, let's see. Spark and Source says Timber's very similar to Mark Gahey. Yeah, like Mark Gahey, I was looking at the stats yesterday. I think the one thing about Gahey that I didn't necessarily know about was his playing out of the back. I wasn't sure that he had the passing range or the technical ability to play the way that we wanted to, even though I liked him as a defender. Um, and the eye test would say that he could, but I think Timber is superior to him on the ball. And even though they're shorter, because Gahey is only like barely 6 feet tall and, Timber is probably like 5'10", you're going to play him mostly at that right back position. If he's playing next to somebody in that center back pairing, it's going to be a 6 foot plus player. And so I do see the similarities like you're saying. But I think, you know, he might be better on the ball, which makes him a better choice for us, you know? Mohammed, thank you so much for your super chat. I really appreciate it. Let's see. Terrence Tipp says Gahey would have a prem premium. Like, I also like agree with that as well. Like, if like we're like, oh well, Ajax want like this huge fee. If we meet in the middle with with Ajax, with like let's say we pay 45 million pounds for Urian Timber, who can play in multiple positions, has the technical ability, has Champions League experience, blah blah blah, young, high ceiling. But you were to go to Crystal Palace and ask them for Gahey, they're going to charge you like 60 million for him. The market is just, especially in the Premier League, is much more inflated, and he's English. So you might be, even if Ajax are asking for a big fee, you still might get a lower fee than what you would want for Mark Gahey, which is good for us, you know. So let's see. Yassine says, Jess, would you take Aymeric Laporte to Arsenal if he wants to remain in the Premier League and not move back to Spain? No, I wouldn't, not because he's not talented, but I don't think we need him. We have 2 left-sided center backs as it is. We don't need a third one. We have Kivior and Gabriel. If we had not bought Kivior, I'd be like, absolutely. But I think Arsenal need to focus on solidifying that right side, particularly in that right back area. So yeah, but Laporte is like a great player, and whoever gets him, you know, is going to have a good player on their hands. Let's see. Giovanni says, also everyone has to realize that Man City also isn't United and Chelsea. They don't like bidding wars, and it's false narrative that they would spend on big players other than Grealish. Social Join says Gahey from Palace is 60 million M. So essentially, like, we would still be getting a better deal, you know, despite Ajax maybe wanting a little bit more than what we initially bidded for. So yeah. Abraham says, just go easy on fans, please. The reason for us being mad and because we want Arsenal, because we the past years, and please, you can't blame us for being pessimistic, you know. I'm not blaming you guys for being pessimistic. I don't agree with the level of hysteria that I've seen over the past couple of days. I will never think that that makes sense, because nothing has happened. There's enough positive things out there that if you, you know, just took your emotions out of it, you could just read it for what it is. And being anxious, being a little bit reluctant, pessimistic maybe, but hysteria, telling people that they should be sacked off of the back of 1 or 2 bids, or maybe not enough movement, for me, it's just not something that I feel like makes any sense. So I won't go over it again, but I understand, like I already said, with Kai Havertz, like I get that. And even with Rice, like, you know, the anxiety that you have when the deal is not done, I feel that as well. But I'm also like calm enough to not be telling people that they should be sacked off of the back of something that, if it still does happen, that will look really silly. Because if we get Rice, a lot of this, not the pessimism or the reluctancy or the anxiety, won't look stupid, but saying that people should be sacked because negotiations didn't go the way you wanted does look dumb, you know. So that's my point. Yassine says, I think Yuri and Timber will fit Mikel Arteta's system and improve a lot on the back, just like Lisandro Martinez first season at United. Yeah, like, we need some sort of right back, but we need the right back to fit what we do. And I was always kind of reluctant around bringing in just like an attacking fullback, because we had Bellerin. He's kind of like that kind where he just goes forward and does the overlapping. I wasn't necessarily sold on the idea that that's what we needed. Arteta likes either the midfield fullback or the center back like fullback, and Urian Timber fits more in that center back fullback kind of situation, but he also has the ability to play out from the back really well. So like you said, I think he'd be a really good addition to what we already have back there. And if you have Timber, White, Gabriel, Saliba, Kivior, Tomiyasu as those defensive kind of defenders, they can all play from the back. They all can defend. They all have some athleticism to them. Zinchenko is a little bit different because we know he's a different type of fullback altogether. But I think you're building like a solid group there, which we need. James says Timber has made it public that he wants to leave. I can imagine him forcing a move if a second bid is rejected, as he could have left last season. Exactly. And that goes back to my point of, you know, like most clubs will do you a solid. Like, some clubs are assholes, but if you signed a new deal and stayed a year longer, you know, sometimes they will like grant you an easier exit because you kind of did them a solid and stayed a little bit longer. Because if you remember, Ajax last season were once Ten Hag left, it was kind of like all of their players were kind of like fleeting the scene. Edson Alvarez, like he had the opportunity, I think, to go to Chelsea. They kept him. Anthony, he left. Like they had lost quite a few players. Didn't they lose Hilaire as well? So some players had to stay past the time that they probably wanted to be there. So in order to like, okay, well, I did this for you, they have to come up with their end of the goods, which might be giving them an easier exit. Which I think that's what will happen. I think it'll be fine. Scarif says people thinking it's FIFA career mode and giving in to the banter from rival fans, they just gotta chill. And again, like I'm just saying, like, can we not have a little bit of patience? It's only been 1 week in the window, and we expect everything to be done already. And a big 100 million English record, like West Ham are selling their best player. They're selling their captain. They're selling their biggest asset. And so the idea that this was just going to go like we're going to put in one bid and it was just going to kind of be like done. I don't know who told you that, but like that was never going to happen. Matt Hatter says people asking futuristic questions when we don't know who's coming in yet. Let's see. Social Join says you guys are going to get rattled every day. Look at the Timber post from Ornstein versus Romano. Romano just rehashed it and then added spin on it about the price just for traction. Yeah, I mean, we know what Fabrizio Romano does. Like he adds like his own little thing on it, so it looks like he knows a little bit of something different. So I just listen to Ornstein mostly because I just feel like he's the most he makes sure that what he says is as close to what the club is saying. And I think he's more careful with what he does, and the information that he gets is mostly from clubs instead of agents and stuff like that. So I just kind of look and see what Ornstein is saying, and I'm like, okay, this is probably as close to what the reality is. And Fabrizio Romano is kind of like somebody that parrots certain things, and sometimes he has exclusives, but for the most part, I just think he kind of just adds his own spin, like you guys say. The penalty spot says Arsenal will do what was decided when Arteta joined us years ago. Sticking to the plan will happen whether Gunners get hernia attacks, cholesterol attacks, etc., and not just health tip choices. Yeah, I mean, Arsenal are not going to be scared into deviating from the plan because Arsenal fans are not happy. So Tim Lewis and Richard Garlick are, I think one of them is like a very experienced like corporate lawyer, and the other one worked for the Premier League for years. These guys are not just going to get rattled because Arsenal fans are up in arms about something that they probably have very little knowledge of what's actually going on. So, yeah, it's not going to scare them into doing anything. I think that's the other part of it is because it's also out of my hands. Like I feel a lot more comfortable just kind of like letting things unfold. Let's see. Daniel says, I think the strategy when looking at dealing with West Ham was great as we managed to avoid a bidding war after the main media saw Arsenal's bid get rejected. That was another thing. Is like, that's why I'm kind of like I'm trying to be as relaxed as possible because right after our first bid was rejected, they said all the other teams were going to come in and they were going to come in within like 24 hours and nothing happened. They're saying that Man City will come in next week, but they also said Man City would come in this week. So I don't know. I kind of feel like they're using the Man City thing in order to, make us feel like we need to hurry up or, whatever. And then ex West Ham like employee who's like a really reliable West Ham kind of like he leaks information and stuff like that or whatever, was saying that yeah, they're having a really difficult time getting that bidding war going, and he really wants to come to Arsenal, and so the deal will get done at some point. But a lot of what's being pushed down in the media about the embarrassing bids and other teams coming in as being pushed out by West Ham. One to make Arsenal look bad and one to try to pressure them into paying more. So I'm relaxed until something happens. That's just kind of where I am. Nelson says, I feel like this Rice deal is done, but both clubs are just putting out stories to give West Ham time to get a replacement. The other teams know West Ham have 100 million replacement will be expensive. Yeah, I don't know if they're putting out the information in order to you know, throw off the scent or anything like that. I just think, you know, um, it's public negotiations and one team wants more and the other team feels like they're in a strong position. And so it's a little bit of like a push and a back and forth. And yeah, this is hundreds of millions of pounds that we're talking about potentially, you know, being passed from one club to another. It's so difficult to get these things done quickly. And it's only been a week, so let's see how it goes. Saksham says, I'm optimistic that we may win the Premier League next season with the exclamation point. Got to see what everybody else does and stuff like that. But I think we're going to have a good window. That's for sure. Magambo says, Ornstein himself wrote that the bid is expected to be rejected. Then why bid low? The reason why you bid low and you inch up is because if you go ahead and you give West Ham exactly what they want, one, they could still ask you for more. And two, that's just, you take away your power in negotiations. I feel like people think it's a sign of strength to go in there and overpay for things that you could have gotten for cheaper. But really, your position of strength is knowing that you have the player wants to come to you, he wants his future sorted out sooner. You have a certain price that you want to pay, they have a certain price that you want to pay, and you meet somewhere in the middle. And again, the structure with the Declan Rice. So we're going backwards a little bit because people want to talk about the Declan Rice situation, but the structure has been mentioned so many times. And so just because the overall fee is the exact same, doesn't mean the structure is not different, but you still Arsenal are not going to negotiate in a way that's not beneficial to them and their bottom line because Arsenal fans have anxiety and they want it done quickly. So I just think, we don't know as much as I feel like we think we know. Negotiations kind of always go like this. I saw earlier today that Dortmund, a very well-run club, bid 30 million for Edson Alvarez. They have, first of all, they have Jude Bellingham money. They bid 30 million for Edson Alvarez when Ajax want 50 million. This is just how negotiations go, and you kind of inch up and then you meet somewhere in the middle. I don't know how many more times I need to say it because people are, well, why bid low? Everybody does that. They're not going to stop doing it because fans want things done quickly. And if you do that by the way, if you do that on every single one of your signings, like with Timber, if you pay 20 million over what you initially, so if you just pay all the fees, let's look at the difference. So I have us down for spending about 100 million on Declan Rice, 60 million on Kai Havertz, 40 million on Timber, and let's just say those three. If we just went and paid what all those clubs wanted, so we put an additional 20 on Declan Rice, we put an additional 15 on Kai Havertz, that's 35, and we put an extra 20 on Yuri and Timber, that's 65 million additional that people want us to just throw at those clubs because they want the anxiety to be over. That's a lot of money to just be throwing away when you could potentially get those fees down if you're patient and you negotiate. That's an additional player, so that's the additional winger that you want. That's the additional midfielder that you potentially want. And I'm not sure that Arsenal should throw that away because you guys have anxiety. That doesn't make sense. Raymond says, if Partey is sold, then depending on what we get for him, we can still go in for Caicedo. So that's the next part that we obviously need to chit chat about, because yesterday there were more reports around Thomas Partey leaving. And I think Fabrizio Romano was talking about it, that there was concrete chances that he would leave. and Arsenal are open to seeing offers, and he had interest from Saudi Arabia. As soon as I heard that, I can understand so much more why Arsenal would be interested in selling him, because if you haven't been paying attention, Saudi Arabia is paying stupid prices for these players to leave. And so not only would you be getting 250,000 pounds off of your wage bill, but potentially we paid 45 million for Thomas Partey. If we were to get like 40 million for him, you're basically getting like all your money back. And so instead of extending him, a player that's, you know, declining, we don't know what his situation is off the pitch, moving this player on is potentially a really good move if he's going to Saudi Arabia and they offer us a good fee, and then replacing him with somebody like Caicedo or Lavia. Now, we're said to be in like advanced negotiations with Lavia on his personal terms. So that doesn't mean that we've like linked up with Southampton and talked about the fee there, but it seems like our interest is more serious with Lavia than it is with Caicedo, which I know will make people upset because that's the player that they really wanted. But this all goes back to people wanting the Rice deal to get done. If we want the Rice deal to be done and we want to be able to also get all these other players, sometimes something has to give. And so maybe you don't get Caicedo, who is maybe your number one option to replace Thomas Partey. Maybe you go for Lavia and you get everybody else that you want, right? So Thomas Partey looks like he could really leave. This is coming from a Saudi Arabian account that's been kind of like going over everything that's been happening with all of the players from all the different European leagues going to that league. But Thomas Partey's agent has given his approval for the Saudi league to negotiate a deal for Partey. So this guy could actually really be leaving, which is crazy because at the beginning of the season, he was one of our best players, and it's taken a real quick turn, which, I think a lot of people are, kind of shocked by. But when you consider absolutely everything, and you know what I mean by absolutely everything, there might not be a better time to move him on, when we're in a position of strength, where we have a big enough budget to kind of replace him and bring in several midfielders. I don't think moving him on will be as big of a deal as other people do, because I think that we can replace him adequately. It is understood that Arsenal midfielder Thomas Partey is a name currently under discussion in Saudi Arabia. So this could actually move quite quickly. And that's what moves me into the Lavia conversation. Now, the thing about Romeo Lavia is just he's very talented, but he's green. I think he had one really good season in the Premier League playing for the worst team in the league, and he's logged so many minutes. So we know he can play in the league. We know physically he can do it. He has 1 year's experience starting, but that's different experience than a 30-something-year-old player playing for Arsenal that's also played in the Champions League, that's also won trophies. So you're really going from one extreme to kind of like the other, even though we know that Lavia is very, very talented. Southampton want the record fee for an under 21 player. Now, the initial report that said that they wanted a record fee, people didn't read it all the way, because all they read was the record fee, and they started getting panicking because they sold Virgil van Dijk for 75 million. It's for an under 21 player, and that record fee was for Luke Shaw, and that was around like 30 to 35 million. So 40, 45 million is probably about where Arsenal are going to try to get Lavia for. And so, yeah, you'd be replacing Thomas Partey with Romeo Lavia, also bringing in Rice, bringing in Havertz, and having Jorginho already there. So you have quite a few like experienced midfielders in there, but you're definitely losing a key figure in Thomas Partey, which I know will make people a little bit nervous. But exciting times. Like, again, a lot of things are moving. Arsenal are moving in the market. Nothing is done yet, but we're 1 week into the market, and Arsenal want to get quite a bit of their stuff done before they go on tour. So that goal seems to be like something that could actually get done. Jono says Arsenal looking real good for third next season. City and Liverpool will be better. Yeah, we'll see what happens with everybody, but I think Arsenal are trying not to rest on their laurels, which is great. Let's see. James says Partey has AFCON in January, also crucial time for us, and the pitches there will leave him injured. Now is the perfect time to move him on. Yeah, it's really, I feel like it's one of those things where we talk about this all the time. Arsenal fans get really like kind of they go in on Edu a lot about not being able to sell. Um, why can't we get money for our players? When it's obvious that you need to sell a player, it's too late. So when you're desperate to sell, people know that they can offer you anything. But when a player is still useful, still has some good years on them, and you're not necessarily desperate, you can sell for a lot more. And this is a really good opportunity because this opportunity may not be here next summer. You never know. So you got to have to figure out, like, do you want to stick or do you want to twist? And if they're offering anything for me north of 40 million, you have to take it. Like, you have to take it. You're never like, you're running the risk of either taking the 40 million or letting him run his deal down. And the last thing you want is for him to have a Fabinho like season for us when people knew that we could have sold him in this summer. So I kind of agree with you that when you think about it from a business perspective and selling players and moving players on and not letting things get stale, this is the perfect time. The problem is that, you're losing a key figure and also Jack at the same time. So how quick can, a midfield of like Rice and Havertz and Odegaard gel, or Odegaard, Rice and Lavia? How quick could that gel? Because we know that Xhaka and Partey had like 2 solid years playing with each other all of the time, and that was a really good partnership. It's a top 4 level partnership. I don't think it would ever have won you the title, or consistently or anything like that, but it definitely was very solid and very good. So, yeah, that's the only issue. I have not reservations, but a little bit of like, fear about this, just because we know how good Thomas Partey is, and Lavia is raw. Like, he is raw, but he's very good. Um, Daniel says he's good, but just has been relegated. I'm not sure. Relegation for me is not really, for me, any sort of indication of the level of where the player is at. Now, if he was 27, 28, 29 years old and he was in a relegation side, then maybe you look at it a little bit more, but he's a young player that was probably their best player in a team that got relegated. And it's not just on him that they got relegated, it's the entire team. We got Ramsdale from a relegation side, and it's fine. He had been relegated like twice or 3 times, and he's a good player for us. So relegation for me is just not really something that I would even look at when it comes to scouting players. It's, do they fit the requirements? And there are very good players that play on relegation sides. I'm sure people wouldn't blink twice if we were looking at a Madison or somebody like that. So, relegation for me is not really the thing. It's whether or not he fits the requirements. And Arsenal were, in some parts of the season, we were physically capable of kind of going up against anybody. But, we saw that we did have some physical limitations in some games. Like against Liverpool, I thought at home and away, we got bodied a little bit. Against Newcastle, we know that they're very difficult to play against because they're quite physical. Man City could be quite physical now as well. And so going up against teams like that, you have to have Rice type midfielders, Lavias in your midfield. You can't have guys that are a little bit brittle, can be ran by very easily, And I think towards the end of the season, we saw that in that lone pivot, Xhaka and Partey were easily bypassed quite a few times, not only just by like Rice, but also by Lavia and also by Caicedo. So that physicality, that agility, that kind of like energetic, we need to get that back into our midfield. And so that's where I think why they're looking at the Caicedos and the Lavias is to bring more life into a midfield that can sometimes be a little bit dim against the most physical teams in the league. Apsis says, I really rate Lavia. I think a lot of people do. Ben says Lavia is raw, but has a lot of room to grow. Logic says Partey is top class for us to get to this point, and we want to sell him before we can see him in the UCL. I mean, what does seeing him in the UCL have anything to do with it? Like, it's just, I mean, you have 2 years left on he has 2 years left on his deal. This is probably the best opportunity you have to sell him. There's no guarantee that he'll stay or leave next summer. So you sell him now, or you extend him, or you run the risk of him leaving on a free. And if we're honest, Thomas Partey is definitely somebody that plays well when the sun is shining, but when the shit hits the fan, he's either not available or he plays crap. So yeah, like, let's not overrate him. He's definitely not somebody in the team that you can rely upon, or he can be your very best player. Would he play a decent squad role? Yes. But if he's going to be a squad player and play a more background role, you could bring in somebody and sell him, move him on. And that would represent good business for somebody that's maybe not going to play as big of a role as he did this season. So I don't know what having to see him in the UCL has to do with anything, really. Yo-Yo says, I welcome Havertz because it means Rice stays back, but signing Lavia to replace Partey means we are forfeiting a title challenge next season unless a heavy hitter comes in for the final third. Eric says Partey is most stable. DMF Partey, or so Arsenal should keep him. Yeah, he's our best midfielder, or best, like, kind of deeper midfielder. But what I'll say about that is that's also because we've never invested in the midfield, not invested heavily. And I wonder if we would rate Partey as high if we also had, like, we had Lavia and Rice. Like, I would love to see that, like, a couple of games with Rice and then a couple of games with Partey, and see if we actually felt like we would, like, die without him. I feel like the dying without Partey kind of chapter is because the alternative was El Neni or Sambi. The alternative wasn't Rice. Like, you know what I mean? But I hear what you guys are saying. Like, for me, it's more about, can Lavia fill that gap, and can he learn the role quickly? And, is his inexperience going to be so glaringly obvious, more than, like, we can't live without Thomas Partey because we're about to replace him with £100 million player, like, Social Join says, sell Jorginho. Imagine picking Lavia, Jorginho as your depth over Partey. That's banter. All things considered, this might be the best time to move Thomas Partey on. It's not just about what he does on the pitch, it's his off-field issues as well. And that might be a reason why Arsenal are trying to move him on quicker rather than later. I think people are don't consider the full picture. Yeah, on paper, like, you'd probably want to move on Jorginho because Thomas Partey is better than Jorginho. But, he's on very high wages. You don't want to lose him on a free. Maybe Arsenal can foresee a physical cliff because, again, if he becomes a Fabinho next season and he can barely run, and, he kind of looks like he did in those final games of the season, is that a player that's really that much better than Jorginho? I'm not sure. I thought that towards the end of the season, I would have preferred Jorginho in that spot, if that's the Partey we're going to get. So all things considered, off the pitch, on the pitch, contractual situation, I think I can understand why a move out is being considered. Saksham says, because of his case, Arsenal will sell him for sure. They are a PR club. Well, I mean, would you think that Arsenal are a bad club for doing it? I mean, when you say something like they're a PR club, maybe they don't want somebody in their club that has something like that hanging over their heads. I mean, I wouldn't call that PR. I would call that smart. Like, if they think that that's going to be something that's a consistent conversation, or in the background, or, the elephant in the room for our entire season, or we don't know whether he's going to be there or not because things are not clear, then it's kind of like, is that just like being a PR club, or is that being smart? I think a lot of people would, in our position, would consider it if they don't know for sure what's going on. The Dude Diary says the Partey disrespect is unreal. top player, good player on his day, definitely goes missing when it really matters. Um, I think that's kind of the truth about him. If you can convince me that he's not somebody that, if you can convince me that he's somebody that you would trust in the biggest games to be there and also play well, convince me of that. But we've had 3 years of him and we kind of know what he's about. Breezy says people will be surprised how good Lavia is. Henrik says, right now, he's our best defensive midfielder. If we sell him, we have to replace him with someone better. And that before he leaves. Well, Thomas Partey is going to be replaced by Rice and Lavia. So you're getting two midfielders for one. And so, take that how you want to, but, you know, you would be replacing him, you know. Leslie says Ben White DM. Don't think that's going to happen, but he can technically play there. Emmanuel says, we are tired of the Rice saga. The transfer window has been the most stressful. You're stressed out in 1 week. Like, I don't know. If you're totally stressed out after a week, then maybe the transfer window is not something you should follow because it's like it's only been a week. Like it's not even July. Alexis says, why are Arteta and Edu messing about? Pay up and get Rice done. I already explained probably why you wouldn't just give them 120 million. Kafuso says Partey struggles when the players around him ain't the quality and he tries to overcompensate. Well, here's the thing is how good of a player could you be if you can't be the player that kind of like lifts the team up even when you have like a player around you that's not as good. So I think the best players make everybody better and can kind of like be next to a younger player and help them through it. Where Thomas Partey I guess he can't walk and chew gum at the same time. I've always kind of said this that I feel like Xhaka and Partey have to play with each other. Like they have to hold each other's hands. It's not just Xhaka holding Partey's hand, it's Partey holding Xhaka's hand. And so once you break those two apart, the flaws become a lot more apparent, and neither of them can kind of like compensate for other players around them. They can't lift players up. They kind of have like perfect situation. And I'm not sure that that's somebody that you want to be one of your highest paid players, is somebody that if the conditions aren't perfect, they can't perform, which is basically what you're saying. So again, like it's not that I'm saying that Thomas Partey is not a great player, but I feel like people are like ignoring like the obvious reasons why Arsenal might want to move him on. And as long as you replace him well, I don't think you'll miss him as much as people make it seem. And that's my only concern, is replacing him properly. And if you brought in Rice and Lavia, I don't necessarily feel like that's two players that can't, you know, become better than Thomas Partey, can be more influential than Thomas Partey, can give us more longevity than Thomas Partey. So yeah, that's kind of where I sit with it. Burry says, for everyone dissing Partey, check out success record with him on the pitch and him not playing for us. He's one of the main reasons we challenge City. Well, I go back to my main point is that Thomas Partey is our best player because we've never invested in anybody else. So it's kind of it's easy to be the best player when the alternative is Sambi or El Neni, so there's definitely that. But, you know, if Rice were there and Rice were playing with Odegaard and, even Xhaka per se, and, I don't know necessarily that Thomas Partey is still the most important player in our team. So, yeah, that may be true, but it's true because there's nobody else. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, we're going to bring in new players and we'll get to see whether or not they can do a good job. Let's see. Yo-Yo says, don't do that. Partey literally had to drop to the back line when Holding started. He can leave, but he has to be upgraded. Kind of hear what you guys are saying, but then you guys don't have the same energy for anybody else. If other players have to play next to Holding, it's still their fault, right? So Thomas Partey gets a pass because he had to play with Rob Holding, but nobody else does. So you have to have the same energy for everybody else. I feel like your most important player, the player that's getting paid the most, the guy that you spent the most on, has to perform better, even in situations that are not perfect. And I think along with other players, he mentally just could not handle the run in. And I think that's just the truth. But yeah, like Partey is a really, really good player, and, like, I don't know how many times I can, like, kinda say it, but, like, no matter how many times I say that he's a really good player, top player on his day, I can't ignore the fact that, like, his injury record hasn't been great, you know, when we're in very important games, he's not really the difference, sometimes he ends up being the problem or one of the bigger problems, so, I'm just trying to think of it holistically, but I've never said that he's not a great player, I just, you know, I think there is a world where we move him on and we bring in new players and we're good, or even better, so, and I think Arsenal feel the same way, so, and also off the field issues. Akal says all the players were not doing well at the end, including Saka and Jorginho. Was not the solution. Partey. The difference between the two of them is that they're not being paid £250,000 per week. So again, like when people were saying, "Oh my gosh, Saka, if he's going to be our most highest paid players, I have these expectations of him and these expectations of him. Oh my gosh, like blah blah blah. He's gonna have to score this many goals." You guys don't have the same energy for somebody with vast experience, is our current most important, like, highest paid player. He gets all these caveats all of a sudden, like, yeah, everybody kind of fell off, but, like, obviously, he should have more responsibility or we should expect more of him because he's the guy, isn't he? Terrence Tibbs says Partey is the older head who is supposed to lead by example. Exactly, like, before the run in, he was definitely one of our best players, most consistent. But again, like people were saying, well, Saka, he just went missing during the run in. And really, he caught the most heat out of everybody. He missed the penalty. And from that moment on, people were like done with Saka. Nobody got more slander than Saka in those final games. But Thomas Partey also went missing, and people are giving him all these caveats. Again, like I he was one of our best players during that time. It's also not hard to be better than El Neni and Sambi. Of course, he's one of our best players. He's a quality player, but there is a world that you move him on and we're still good. Like, it's just one of those things. Hightower says, I think you're reaching. Just TP was top 3 mids in the Prem. He was top 3 until shit really mattered. Like, again, I also thought it was kind of embarrassing that Arsenal fans were saying that he was just as good as Rodri because, again, when Rodri got down to the games that really mattered in, like, when it was time to win trophies, he was part of the reason why they got it over the line, and our best players went missing. So, top 3 when the sun is shining is great, but when it's difficult, when you're playing against West Ham, maybe don't try to do a rainbow flick over Declan Rice and stop playing, because that was pretty bad for somebody who everybody is saying is like one of our best players. Do you know what I mean? Like, I was really disappointed in Thomas Partey at the end of the season, and I think the club was too. So they obviously have higher expectations of him than you guys do, and I don't understand why you guys don't because he's being paid so much. So yeah, Terrence Tibbs says Saka did catch most of the heat from our fans and rivals. Exactly. Like people are acting like, Thomas Partey he was like people were defending him the most. And I get why, because he's one of our best players and you guys really like him. And Saka was an easy target. But like if you have so much to say about Saka, who's 21 years old and was getting paid like 30 grand a week, 30,000 pounds per week, surely you can have higher expectations of somebody who's has more experience getting paid more. Like, it's weird. But yeah, Thomas Partey could leave and Lavia would come in and replace him along with Declan Rice. I think that's important to say. And, we'll just have to see how it all pans out. But I'm liking how the window is shaping up. Again, I think had we'd done this stream maybe an hour or two before the Declan Rice news came out that about the second bid being rejected, then the mood would have been a lot different. But my overall feeling on this is that in a week, maybe less, we'll start to see these bids or new bids go in, them get accepted, new players come in, and the prospect of bringing in Havertz, Rice, Lavia, and Timber for me is a serious window when just a couple of days ago people were saying that we weren't going to do anything. So, yeah, I'm excited despite kind of feeling a little bit more um, you know, anxious just because I want things to get done, but I'm feeling excited because I really like the people that we're linked with. Um, let's see. Fabrizio Romano saying right after the Kovacic deal, Man City will push for Josko Gvardiol. Um, so their next thing that they're going to be doing is Gvardiol, which I kind of already said as well. Like Fabrizio Romano did kind of show his hand a couple of days ago, saying that, you know, that Man City would probably not go in for Rice if they got Kovacic, and it looks like that's what they're going to do. West Ham turned down Arsenal's second bid for Declan Rice, worth up to 90 million, as the pursuit continues. And again, that's from David Ornstein. So that's kind of where we're at with everything. But the people that we're linked to, if we could get all of these deals done, I think the depth is going to be a lot better. We're going to add some really interesting profiles, and it's a serious window for a team that needs it because, we need trophies next season for sure. Let's see what you guys are saying. Rido Boy says, Arsenal acting like a big club. I must be dreaming. I mean, they are. I mean, as much as people are, upset, they're putting in bids for players. They want to spend the money. Like, it's just not done yet, but a week in, and you can see that Arsenal want to get things done quickly, and they're serious about bringing in multiple players. Henrik says, in recent years, we have not had a midfielder as good as Partey. That's why people want to be class every time, and also maybe overrate him sometimes. Remember Vieira and want those times back. Akash says, Man United might be serious once ownership takeover completes. If they're serious, they're serious. But as long as Arsenal are serious, I don't really care what they're doing. Kawasi says a Rice and Lavia combination is definitely not better than Partey and Xhaka. We actually potentially get worse. I think people have massively overrated Xhaka plus Partey. That partnership is good, but it could be better with younger, more agile, athletic, combative players. One thing that Xhaka and Partey lacked was combativeness. They lacked the agility. They lacked the ability to really compete against the most aggressive teams. And I think that those two can definitely do it. So yeah, but I don't think it's worse. I think the problem is that, you know, it's weird because like Xhaka went from somebody that was like not rated at all to I think almost at the point now where he's being overrated quite a bit. Declan Rice he's an improvement on Granit Xhaka, and I think it's not really that hard to see. Granit Xhaka is a good player that adapted well to a role that didn't really suit him, and he was very solid and consistent. He also was always available, but we can definitely upgrade upon him, and I think Rice is an upgrade. Lavia is kind of like a younger version of Partey, but I think all things considered, when you add Kai Havertz to that, um, I don't think that pair is like categorically worse, like what people are saying. And it's hard to even make those claims when you haven't seen them play. So yeah, Yo-Yo says Xhaka Partey weren't really the partnership last season. Zin and Partey, Xhaka Odi, Havertz and Rice come in as starters. That's another point as well that like um if the inversion is on the other side and it will end up being Timber and Lavia and potentially like Declan Rice and Odegaard or Odegaard and Havertz, and the pivot is going to be Rice and Timber or Zinchenko. So yeah, I still feel like we're doing pretty well there when we talk about like upgrading and bringing in better profiles and more combative, athletic, agile, because those are the things that we were really missing. Social Joint says, how can you overrate a midfield that came second over a combo that's never played together? What are you talking about? Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, I just don't think that, like, when I look at Granit Xhaka and Thomas Partey, I think Thomas Partey on his day is one of the best midfielders in the league. I don't think Granit Xhaka, even though he was performing like one of the best midfielders in the league, that he actually is, if that makes sense. So, I still think Granit Xhaka is being overrated now because he had one good season. That was probably as good as it was going to get. I think, we can do better than Granit Xhaka and we can upgrade upon him. And I think Declan Rice is an upgrade upon him. Like, I don't think that's my feeling. But I don't know. I think people are really attached to something that was like good for us and like it did really well, but the idea of the unknown is making people cling on to something and almost overrate it where, we can do better. Um Aha says if Timber comes in and he inverts instead of Zinchenko, plus he's a defender, so he'd probably be better defensively, can allow us to play Havertz if we get him Odegaard plus Zinchenko as a midfield option. Maybe, but I just don't envision Zinchenko playing midfield for us. Not in that left 8 position. I don't think he has enough of a goal threat anyway. I think there's a reason why he plays the position that he does and why Pep and Arteta have never really played him in midfield. But I do think inverting with Timber on the other side, who's better defensively, and putting him next to a Rice or putting him next to a Lavia, that can open up opportunities and things that we didn't have last season that could be really interesting. Saksham says, don't forget with Partey how we break the lines. Lavia can't do that, nor Rice, without needing some time. Only Chouameni has that type of range. I actually think last season that Partey's main role wasn't necessarily breaking lines. I think Zinchenko's role was more breaking lines. Like he was the guy that was doing most of the dictating of the ball, and Partey was more managing the space. And so I don't think we rely as much on Thomas Partey breaking the lines as we did when he was like our kind of like our only outlet. Like he was the only midfielder that was kind of like doing it for us because like nobody else could. I thought Thomas Partey, what he was really good at was circulating possession and like trying to, get us from one side of the pitch to the other. But in terms of like line breaking passes, I actually think Zinchenko was more of the guy that was doing the orchestrating in midfield, and Thomas Partey was doing a little bit more of like a defensive kind of like steal role, if that makes sense. But yeah, like you kind of lose that a little bit with you don't have that as much, but I'm kind of feeling like again, the role might change a little bit. We might need somebody a little bit more defensively sound, agile, athletic that can move around the pitch. And maybe it's more important to get somebody like that than actually line breaking passes because we have other guys around that position that can do that passing. But yeah, like everybody has their like everybody's entitled to their opinions, and I can understand being like very attached to Thomas Partey. But again, like considering everything, I think you can understand why Arsenal might be considering all things considered, but the role could be changing, the dynamics can be changing, and because we haven't seen it, it feels uncomfortable and it feels like why are we tearing apart something that worked? But we can still go up a couple levels, and maybe our Arsenal see Lavia plus Declan Rice and different other play like Timber taking us to that next level. You know, Yo-Yo says Zin was Santi, Partey was a techie Coquelin, respectfully. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Zinchenko was doing so much of the orchestrating in that midfield, it was ridiculous. I know that towards the end of the season, like he wasn't everybody's favorite because defensively he wasn't great, but like he was really doing a lot of the orchestrating. He was really that guy in midfield, like controlling the tempo. And that's one thing that Thomas Partey does struggle with is he's very vertical. He likes to do those line breaking passes, like you guys are saying, and he always wants to go forward, where Zinchenko would kind of like get it, take his time, speed up play, slow it down. And so I think more with that position, what we're looking for is somebody that can control tempo, somebody that can circulate possession, and also somebody that can stop transitions and keep the pressure on by defending. I think it's a little bit different. Yo-Yo says, I'm comparing roles, not quality. People relax. Barra says, Partey is fast. We're forgetting the lengthy strides to save the goal for Man U last season. Xhaka turns and moves like ass. Well, Xhaka's gone. So, I mean, Xhaka's not really who we're comparing him to, right? But I only saw Partey run fast that one time. It was one time that we saw him do it. And I remember that it was almost like pretty much one time because everybody said, where did that speed come from? Partey is a good on the ball player. I actually think Partey is like an anomaly where most DMs that are of a darker hue, get compared to destroyers. It's like they're just in there to just kind of like mop things up and tackle and stuff like that. But what made Thomas Partey more special is that on the ball, he can carry, he can drop the shoulder, he can evade pressure. And like you guys said, he had those line breaking passes. But like the idea that he's like this fast, agile, like super aggressive, like no, he's definitely not that. And Rice is definitely that. And I think that's key because maybe Arteta sees things changing and we don't need a player as much like Partey. We need somebody a little bit more defensive. You know what I mean? I don't think Partey is as fast as people are trying to make him out to seem. And this is somebody that, especially in like the first 2 years that he was here, a huge fan of Thomas Partey. Thought, if he could get some good fitness under his belt, he could be somebody that we could really rely upon. It ended up that we could until kind of like the run-in, which was really like, disappointing. But I would never claim that Thomas Partey was fast. I think that's, a little bit of a stretch. Let's see. Paul Wood says we're not getting Rice. Second bid has been rejected. Okay. Okay. Bear says because he doesn't really need to move that fast. Most times last season, we bossed it in possession and passing, plus the goal he scored were crucial. Okay, so now you're saying he doesn't need to move, and that's why he didn't move. So is he fast and he covers all the space, or does he not? Like, what are you saying? I feel like you're kind of moving the goalposts. It's like whatever, yeah, we bossed it in possession for the most part, but towards the end of the season, I did think that in transition we were getting bopped quite a bit, you know. So we need more athletic, combative people in midfield. That's definitely something that we need. It really can't be denied at this point. Like one thing that we missed was that, so that's why Rice and Lavia are being looked at. So yeah. Nashville says Partey is a real gangster and a real gangster don't run for shit because real gangsters can't run fast. Let's see. Coach Dave says Partey's grade was at 8 last year. For you, for you it was. And he was better this season than he was the previous seasons because he maintained his fitness a lot better. But, we still saw shades of those like really weird performances where he like is so below his level towards the end. And so I would say maybe like I would say more of like a 7 would probably be closer to what I would think his season was because you know I think those big games and when it really matters are weighted differently than when you're just playing at the beginning of the season. But yeah, he's a top player and you know losing him or moving him on does require quite a bit of like maneuvering and making sure you bring in really good players to not see a drop off and actually to go to the next level. And so I completely understand, why people are anxious about it. But to say like, he was fine towards the end of the season and he wasn't a big reason, or wasn't, it was on Saka and we expect Saka to do all this stuff, but like Thomas Partey gets a pass. I'm not trying to hear any of that. Let's see. Dude Diary says the reason why we're getting bopped in transition is because towards the end of the season, Partey's role changed to where he was playing right-sided center back and right back, and Jorginho was getting outplayed endlessly. Jorginho didn't start against Man City. Like I'm talking about from like the World Cup on, where we like when we went to Everton away, we couldn't even compete in the midfield, and they were transitioning on us like nobody's business. Onana and Decore were beating us up. I'm talking about Bournemouth at home, where every single time they came down the pitch, they looked very dangerous and they were in on goal with one pass. Even Everton at home, very similar. We won the game, but there were several instances where it was like if they were better players, they would have put those balls in the back of the net. There's so many different examples where I thought midfield was a little light when we were getting transitioned on. This is so funny because like I feel like I'm watching something like I was maybe watching it differently than other people, but I was really worried about like defensively how it was so easy for them to get from you know defending to attack by just a couple of passes through our midfield, straight passes through our midfield into the channels in behind. And it was like Saliba and Gabriel were doing a lot of heavy lifting, and we were a lot more combative and physical in the first part, like the first half of the season. And that dropped off quite a bit in the second half. Um, as it felt like to me. Um, Hector says Partey has to be replaced. I do not think Arsenal are serious about it. Partey has to be replaced. I do not think Arsenal are serious about it. Breezy says the fact that we needed Jorginho to come in says everything about Partey at the end of the season. I won't be gaslit into thinking that there was like no issues there, and like we weren't just like so open. Like I just won't. Like I remember what I was watching, and I'm not surprised that they maybe want to look in a different direction, because it's been 3 seasons. He's been one of our highest paid players, and your highest paid players have to be the guys that make the difference even when shit is not going well. And so I can accept that almost like as a collective we fell off, but some of the performances that Thomas Partey put in at the end of the season, you know, they have to be looked at, you know? Um, and I think Arsenal are looking at that plus some of the other stuff. Apsis says that's not true. Partey was shit and Jorginho made it better. MK Dollar says the third bid should get Rice if we are ambitious enough, and keeping Partey is crucial. Aha says Jorginho wasn't that much. Yeah, like I thought Jorginho had the physical limitations, but that we obviously knew about, but we played a little bit better when he was in there. So I think we just know that we need midfielders, period. You know, we need to shift things around. Tamina says Declan Rice to Arsenal, new third bid 100 million soon. I'm pretty like relaxed about it. About the Rice thing. We'll get a third bid in. If it gets too longer than that, then I think like, okay, we're in trouble. West Ham are like really, whatever. But I think we're gonna get him, you know. Yo-Yo says, I try my best to bite my tongue. The Liverpool, West Ham, Southampton games were on the manager. The spaces in midfield were ridiculous. Xhaka, Odie were disjointed from Partey. I mean, if you want to put it on the manager, you can. I just saw players playing lower than their levels, So when do you think Arsenal or Arteta coached them to be further away than they usually are? Or do you think that they just dropped their levels? Like, I think they just dropped their levels. Like, but I hear what you're saying. Ash says, I hate having to watch Partey when he isn't fit, but is playing, which is often he's terrible in those scenarios. And that's the thing. It's like people are like, well, he had a knock at the end of the season. Well, isn't that the issue? Is that every time that we really need him, he has a knock, he has some sort of strain, he has a muscle injury, and we're either playing him through that injury and he's awful, or he's not available at all. Like, you know, and the thing about like, availability and, people saying, well, he needs rest, is he came in like this, like, from the minute that he got here, even when he wasn't played, like overly played, he was getting these same-ish kind of injuries from the moment he got here. And your most important player that's being paid the most should be able to maintain a certain level of fitness for, like, let's say 85% of the season, you know? And I think Arsenal are also looking to bring in somebody that can play every 4 days, because Arteta said that at the end of the season, that all of the main players have to be able to play every 4 days, because that's gonna be the requirement, Champions League, Premier League, Champions League, Premier League. And so, like, people are basically trying to make it seem like we should play Thomas Partey in some games, like in the most important games, and then, rest him for other games. That's just not how it goes. Like, he either has to be available, or we have to do something else. But saying that he has a knock is pretty much like driving home the point that he's not ever available. So he's such a good player. Like, it's not about his talent level. Nobody's saying that he's not talented, but the going missing at the end of the season, the constant injuries, the off the field issues, the fact that, like, it's just a lot, it's just a lot. Questy says, would get rid of Partey the season after next, not next season. I guarantee you we won't challenge. Um, the thing is that you can't just keep him for next season because then you run the risk of letting him go for free. And what Arsenal fans always cry about is that we don't get any fees for our players. And the reason for that is because we don't like sell players when they actually have value. So right now Thomas Partey has value. He won't have that much value next summer, and he may just say, I'll just go for free. So you have to figure things out. Um Ash says we won't get any money the season after next. Um yeah. Yeah, for sure. Wisdom says, Jess, I could remember the smile on your face when Partey came in for Jorginho and you debunking the idea that him being replaced by Jorginho. This 360 change from you is shocking. Well, I'm not opting for Jorginho to replace Thomas Partey. I'm opting for us to bring in Rice and Lavia, not let this man leave for free, making sure that if somebody offers us 40 million right now for a player that may not have any value in 2 seasons, that we take it. So again, like you guys are taking this like whole idea that like I'm open to him leaving, and I'm taking a whole view of it holistically, not just from the fact that he's our best player, one of our best players, and we like have to keep him, but also looking at contractually the stuff off the pitch, how he's performed in big matches, how he's always injured, and taking that all into account and saying like, could we not maybe look to moving him on this summer and it be potentially a good thing? So it doesn't have anything to do with Jorginho versus Thomas Partey, because I'm not advocating for Jorginho to start over him now. Never once in this conversation have I said, well, yeah, just replace Jorginho with Thomas Partey because he's better. What I am saying, though, is that if you put Rice and Lavia, you put those two in our midfield, you know, and then maybe if Thomas Partey leaves, I still think there's an opportunity for that to be better, and then also we make sure that we sell him for a profit and he doesn't just leave for free. Because what I'll tell you right now is that all the people in the comment section right now that are crying about Thomas Partey leaving, if he had a Fabinho season on us next season and you could barely use him, he could barely run, he fell off of a physical cliff, which we saw towards the end of the season is very possible with him, they'd be saying, why don't we sell him to Saudi Arabia for 40 million? So, I'm just saying you have to consider it. Mr. Ram says, we all know that Partey is 35 years old. Fake birth paper says he's born in 1993. That's why Arteta wants to sell him. I just think you have to consider it with 2 years left on his deal, and if you get a good offer. Now, if Saudi Arabia offer 15 million, no, you don't sell. If they offer you 25 million, no, you don't sell. But if they offer you 40 million, which is basically what you paid for him, and I do think you have to consider it. I think we'd be stupid not to. Ash says Lavia isn't coming to start every game. Relax, people. Exactly. But again, people are hearing what they want to hear. They're hearing, oh, we're just going to replace him with Lavia, a kid, and that's the only player coming in, and we're just going to fall off of a cliff. I remember when people said we wouldn't survive Aubameyang leaving, and we actually got better when he left. So, there is a world where you can replace somebody that's very important to your team and get better. I just don't think people want to see it. So, yeah. Coach says, if we sell Partey and get Rice and Lavia and it flops, will you hold Arteta accountable? Yeah. Yeah, of course. But the thing about is you guys say hold him accountable when he's made bad decisions, or I felt like he's made bad decisions or he's made mistakes. I've called him out for it. And I know I've called him out for it because I've had people that are very positive that don't ever say anything bad about Mikel Arteta, that I've been called negative. I've been called Leanne Gunner. I've been totally ripped up one side down the other because I've said anything about Mikel Arteta needing to do this, making a mistake here, maybe, whatever. So I do hold him accountable. The thing is that when I hold him accountable, I don't just call him, Paella Pulis and that's it, and say he should be sacked, he should be sacked, he should be sacked. Now, if we completely flop next season and I've already kind of said this like several times, but I'll say it again that if we don't win anything next season, meaning we don't win a trophy, we finish outside of top 5, which, top 5 is, going to be Champions League positions. But let's just say we don't mount a title challenge. We don't maintain our Champions League. We go out of the cups early. We don't win any trophies. He has to go. With everything spent, the outlay for this summer and previous summers, he has to go. Like, we need to look at something different because he will have everything at his disposal to be successful. This season, nobody really expected us to do all that stuff. And I think people are being disingenuous saying that they expected that. Off the beginning of the season, but this season for sure, like, we need to be moving into the competitive on all fronts, meaning, winning or being in the title race at the very least, if not winning the Premier League, winning a trophy, being serious in the cups, not going out early in the Champions League. So I will hold him accountable. And if losing Partey and bringing in Lavia and Rice are the reason why we don't do those things, I will say it. I don't know why people act like I never hold them accountable. I think people attribute holding somebody accountable as yelling at the screen and calling people names and saying that they need to be sacked every 5 seconds. I'm sorry. Like, I've been called negative too many times for people to say that I don't hold Mikel Arteta accountable. So it's just bullshit that I don't. Nashville Gooner says that Havertz is coming in for the Gundogan role. Eric Joseph says Timber, Lavia, Rice, Havertz. If we get them, is a good window for sure. But if you add Caicedo and sell Partey, excellent window. I just don't think there's a situation or a reason why you'd need Caicedo and Lavia. I think it's Lavia or Caicedo. But again, there's also sales that could happen that will bring in other players because we're also still linked to bringing in another winger. So it could be those 4 players that you said plus a winger, which would be, I think, a great window, considering people think we're not doing anything in this window. Arteta said, our Yo-Yo says Arteta isn't going anywhere anytime soon, no matter what happens. It's so funny because, like, I don't know. It's for me. I feel like I get pelters from both sides, from people that consider themselves the high standards people, and then on the other side, the top gooner people, and everybody's like, da, 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 da. I just think I'm probably balanced, and that's more why I get it from both sides. But I'm not going to change just because people want to see something different. We have to win a trophy next season. We need to be competitive in the Champions League. We have to be in a title race, if not win the Premier League. And if we don't, it's not because we didn't recruit, especially if we get the window that we're looking at now. It's maybe because the manager's not good enough, you know? Debuni says, just why are you pushing this Partey agenda? Makes it sound as though he is the worst player at the club and he is our best midfielder. No, it doesn't. That's what you're hearing. You're hearing that because I'm not saying that he's our best player and we should not sell him. There is a world where we sell him and we get better. Just like you guys were saying that there's no way that we should sell Aubameyang, we would not get better if we sell him. Well, we sold Aubameyang, we recruited properly, and we got better. So using that same equation, it can happen with Partey, Rice, and Lavia. It remains to be seen if that would be the combination to replace him and still feel like we're competitive and win things. But all things considered, there is a good case for why you would consider selling him. And no, I'm not going to turn a blind eye to the way that he played at the end of the season because I like Thomas Partey. It's not a campaign or an agenda. It's, he was shit at the end of the season. Like, he just was. So I don't know. Saksham says, just I saw a video where it was believed that Havertz will play Bayern's Mueller in our system. I would say like the video from Tifo is probably the best one. I don't know if that's what you're talking about, but basically like he talked about his best attributes and what he does well and how he could fit into Arteta's plans, why they want him. And basically like from an overview, he's a Champions League level player with experience that makes the entire squad better. He can play multiple positions, but playing in that left 8 role or whatever, that left 10, he's somebody that can definitely get into the box, score the goals and stuff like that. And that's probably where Arteta sees him. And obviously they'll take some psychological work to get this guy to get some confidence and feel like he can play football again. But yeah, there's everybody has a, you know, kind of like their own opinion on where they think Havertz would play. Some people feel like he is a backup for our forwards. I just can't see you putting, you know, that amount of wages and this fee for a backup player, but I could be wrong. But, you know, we'll see. Gunna Down Under, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, don't understand the hate on Havertz move. Everyone calling him a 9. Chelsea only played him there because they had no striker. He's a 10, but very universal. It's clear why Arteta wants him and can play anywhere across the front. I agree. I can understand why people are like against it, but I also feel like there's just like this, like he's gonna play number 9 because that's where he played for Chelsea. Not sure about that. Super chat from Gunna in the CDN Rocky says, Partey plus El Neni to Saudi for good money. Stall Havertz so we don't have to give Chelsea money, use Saudi money to hijack Caicedo masterstroke. Maybe. I think the thing is like Chelsea are going to get the money for Caicedo no matter what we do. So whether we give them the Havertz money or they get it from Saudi Arabia because they're going to sell Ziyech and Koulibaly and Mendy all over there, they're going to get the money for Caicedo anyway. And because Chelsea were not able to buy Ugarte, they actually have the money for whatever sales that they do, despite whatever we're going to give them, plus the Ugarte money to actually put a lot more up front than we probably could for Caicedo anyway. So I think what you're looking at is like, even if we don't give them the money, there's still a chance that we could lose Caicedo because they're just focusing a lot on him and we're focusing a lot on Rice. And I think that's why we pivoted to Lavia. That seems very easy. Like, just take the Saudi money, you know, don't give Chelsea anything and then they won't be able to buy Caicedo. But they're going to be able to buy Caicedo. If you guys haven't been looking, they're selling quite a few players to Saudi Arabia and for good fees. So they're going to have it, and they already had money to buy Ugarte and to trigger his release clause. So they have the money, regardless to if we give it to them or not. Caicedo, I think, for them is kind of like a more likely scenario just because that's kind of like their primary target and they can push as much resources to it, where we have a primary target that's going to cost 100 million pounds and we kind of need to put as much as we can towards that. And I don't think that means we can, in any circumstance, we can pivot towards Caicedo and feel confident that we'll beat them to him. I get that a lot of people are disappointed about the Caicedo thing, but the priority was always Rice, you know? So Saksham says people think real transfer is the same as FIFA transfers. I think it's just people just, you know, they react to what they see and they don't really think anything deeper beyond like, this is what I want. And so this is how it should go. And, you know, just get it done. But transfers are just not that easy. And, you know, there's more layers to it than just, I want this, get this. You know, it's not as easy as people make it out to seem. Some of the lists that I see and the like, oh, outgoing should be these 10 players and incoming should be these 7 players and net spend would be this and it's fine, doesn't take into account anything like it's just too simplistic, you know? So I don't want to say it's just like FIFA, but I don't actually expect like fans to really think that deeply on it. But what I would think is that maybe they would consider that maybe the people that are actually doing the negotiations or involved in it know a little bit more than we do. Yo-Yo says we have to demand the most from our most senior players, and ultimately they let us down last season. But I truly believe Arteta's decision to play Partey at right back versus Palace revealed Arteta's shortcomings when we won that game. Like, what does him playing right back against Crystal Palace when we beat them 4-1 have to do with the performance that we had against Southampton, the performance against West Ham, the performance against Liverpool, where he played in his best position? I don't know, you know, and the only reason why I think Arteta played Partey at right back was because he wanted to see if he can push Ben White central, and play Thomas Partey there and play Jorginho at the DM, because we were in a really bad position with Holding playing at right back, or not at right back, right center back, and you want to see what he had. But I don't know if it shows his shortcomings. especially when that game was not part of the games that derailed our season. He was playing in the position that he always plays in, you know, when that happened. Steve Stone says, if Arsenal's open bid was 110 million, if you were West Ham, would you accept straight away or would you try haggling for more? I mean, if they try to give me 110 million and I started at 120, I'm gonna push for 120. I think if we just offered that off rip, maybe they do accept it, but what if we could have gotten him for 10 million less than that? And I know Arsenal fans will say, well, what's 10 million? But that's a lot towards a transfer for another player. So, yeah, I don't know if they would have just accepted off rip because I know that they said originally 120 or 100, plus add-ons going up to 120 or something like that. But I do think you run the risk there of them one thinking you're unserious because you don't know how to negotiate. You start at a very high number close to what they want, and then they take you for a ride potentially. So I like doing things, or Arsenal at least attempting to do things on their own terms and not just being rolled over just because they really want a player. Um, and I think they feel like they're in a strong position. And if Arsenal fans are saying that we should have just went in with a 120 and just gave them what they wanted, but we end up getting him for 100 million. I would say Edu probably deserves some credit and some apologies because that's 20 million towards another player that you guys probably really want. So I would just let it play out. Yeah. But Jay says, have you seen the Pep video talking about Lavia? And he really looks like he regrets letting him go. I don't really look at any of that type of stuff. Pep is a liar. Pep is a liar. He'll tell you anybody's good. You know what I mean? I think he pretty much tells the truth, but does he really regret letting Lavia go? Probably not. He has fucking Rodri. Do you know what I mean? But I do think he's a talented player that's very, respected within City, but not respected enough where they felt like desperate to keep him. So you have to keep that in mind as well. Yo-Yo says, my point is pivoting when Saliba was injured. He found or made solutions and ran away from them when the pressure rose. That's why we slid. Arteta feared making necessary changes to stop the slide. Yeah, I definitely think he needed to find a solution. I was very heavy advocate of get Holding out of the fucking lineup. You guys know that. Like, people were telling me that Holding, like, there was no issues with Holding. There definitely was. So Arteta could have found a different solution, and that definitely was on him. But if we're going to say that him not making those changes alleviates any sort of responsibility on players to just at least keep their heads, especially the experienced players, I don't know. I don't know. I think everybody kind of bottled it, you know what I mean, including Arteta. But yeah, I think we should end it there. Again, I was hoping that this would be a lighter, more fun stream because I thought when people saw that we were making moves and stuff that they would be more excited, but the Rice second bid kind of put a damper on everything. But I hope you guys can at least see that Arsenal are trying and they're trying to get things done quickly, whereas a lot of our rivals aren't really doing anything yet. And so I know it's not much, but at least it could give you some positivity for the future. We're doing these streams pretty much every single day, whether it's a pre-recorded or a stream. You guys know I'll pretty much show up as long as there's big news breaking, which a lot of it was today. And yeah, we'll see what happens with Timber, Havertz, Lavia, Partey, and Declan Rice. And hopefully some bids get accepted soon. Make sure you guys like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.